I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to the regular school committee meeting of Monday, January 13, 2020. This is your notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. Before we jump into the agenda tonight, just real quick, there is a motion to amend. I believe there's a motion to amend the agenda. Mr. Geddes, did you have a motion that you wanted to make?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to include an infrastructure and facilities report after the consent items. The report is from our November 20th subcommittee meeting.
Move. Second.
So this will be from the last meeting of the infrastructure committee from last term, but we don't meet again until after infrastructure meets again, meets this term. So to report out, we'll add it to the end of the agenda tonight so Mr. Geddes can report on what his committee discussed at the last meeting. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Now back to the agenda, and tonight we're going to start with the introduction of our new CTE Director at Attleboro High School. For that, I'll turn it over to the Superintendent, Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. At this time, I'd like to invite up Mr. Rooney and Mr. Guy. So, I certainly have many times in life been confronted with that feeling of that things happen for a reason. And when we found ourselves without a CTE director at the beginning of the year, it was hard to see the optimism in that moment. But as an organization, we really try to always look for the opportunities that present themselves when unexpected things happen. And I am pleased this evening to introduce, well, Bill's going to do the introducing, but to be part of this introduction that in the end has landed us in a really strong place and a situation that has improved for us as a district. So I'm very excited, and at this time I'll hand it over to Mr. Rooney.
So before I introduce our guest of honor, I'd like to just thank the committee for having us tonight, and congratulations to the two new members, or welcome back, I guess I should say. And again, we're grateful for being here, and I'm also grateful to be first on the agenda, so thank you very much. I'd like to just issue a couple of thank yous. As the superintendent alluded to, we were left in a very precarious position for a couple of months. The members of the department did a stellar job of pulling together, helping us with identifying some needs, and just making sure that the ship stayed afloat for that period of time. I'd also like to thank Mr. Jim Koala, who's former CTE director at the high school, also retired superintendent from Blue Hills, who came in and did a tour of our facilities, kind of did a little bit of a needs assessment, and helped the superintendent and I with developing a line of questioning for the next CTE director at the high school. I'd like to thank Susan Edmonds, former director of CTE, who I coaxed to come out of retirement, and she helped us in what was a very bad spot. And then also I'd like to thank my team as well. Gene Hickox and Kevin Gorman and we have a very strong relationship, and there were things that weren't necessarily CTE related, but they just might have been something that the CTE director would typically cover at night or on a weekend. And, Gene and Kevin were, true professionals from the standpoint of helping out. But reason why we're here is that, I'm very pleased to introduce you to our new director of CTE, Jeremy Gay. Jeremy did his undergraduate work at UMass Boston and got his Master's of Education at Fitchburg State. I think one of the things that really intrigued us and drew us to Jeremy's candidacy for this position is that he's been on the ground and in the trenches as a CTE teacher. We're trying to avoid using the term shops, but he was in an auto collision shop for many years. He told a very compelling story in his interview about how He graduated from Bay Path, and he was working in the industry, and his auto collision teacher had to go out on leave of some sort, right? And they, at Bay Path, they asked Jeremy to consider coming back and being the long-term sub. And while he was there, he got bit by the bug of being an educator, and you know, the rest is history, so to speak. But Jeremy, you know, did such good work in the classroom at Bay Path that he was eventually promoted to be the assistant director of CTE there. His last stop was director of CTE at Dighton Rehoboth. And as I was talking to the Sun Chronicle earlier today, you know, I think the fact that Jeremy brings a perspective from the regionals, but also brings the perspective from a smaller but still a comprehensive high school, is going to put us in a position where we've got two very important perspectives for moving forward. And again, we're, you know, 2 short years away from not only opening, you know, a beautiful new building that has our existing CTE lab spaces, but also 4 new programs as well. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce you to Jeremy Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. If I may, with the chairman's permission, I would like to thank you for your time and indulgence this evening. I would be remiss if I didn't give a few thank yous. Number one, to the screening committee. If not for their confidence in me, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity from Mr. Sawyer and Mr. Rooney to be here as well. So I want to thank you both for the opportunity. I'll be very short and sweet tonight, I promise. But my whole life has been revolved around career and tech ed, from a teacher to an administrator. And I'm a result of vocational education. I know the value of it. And there's a lot of exciting things going on here in Attleboro, a lot of big things. And I was looking for a challenge, and I guess I got it. So, no pressure. But it's been you know, I've been here for a little while now. The welcome has been warm and genuine, and everybody's been tremendous, and the future looks bright. So I want to say thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Any comments or questions? Mr. Storrs?
Well, first of all, welcome. I do want to say, you know, what a great time to come into this position. You know, over the next few years, we're going to see something very special happen, and that is going to be state-of-the-art CTE facility areas within that new school, and that's a wonderful thing. I would like to hear from you now that you know about Attleboro and what we do offer. Where do you see that might be areas where we can improve what we offer?
Well, I've only been here for about a week, so I
I'm
can.
putting you on a spot.
You know, one of the things that I can say is that the programs you offer here are top-notch, and the programs that will be coming into the new building will also be top-notch. So you have a great infrastructure, you have wonderful teachers, and the students are some of the most diligent as I've seen. So as far as anything, I don't know, you know, I'm not down in the weeds yet, but I haven't seen anything that raises a flag yet. It's been nothing but good things to view and see.
Great. Again, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Geddes?
Welcome. And yes, it will be a challenge, but if these guys are putting trust in you, I'm sure you'll step up to it. Again, not to put you on the spot, but along the same lines, one of the things that we have discussed, I won't necessarily say it's a goal, but one of the things that we have discussed with the new high school and the expansion of the facilities and the programs is talking about an adult education program, some continuing education courses. Do you have any experience with that? And if not, have you given any thought to any ideas you might have for how to implement it,
Yes and yes.
if possible?
For many years, when I was a teacher at Bay Path, I taught both collision repair for adults at night, but I also taught the licensing course for auto damage appraising. So, former night school instructor. So you didn't know that. Yes, and one of the things that you're going to see going through the process of getting these new programs certified, one of the things they look at is linkages for adult education. Because one of the things that the state doesn't want to do is invest all this money into these programs and have them lay dormant, except for the 6.5 hours we're in session during the day. So if we were to talk about bringing in some sort of an adult after dark education, that would actually benefit us when it comes to the time to put the applications in.
Awesome. Thank you. And welcome.
Thank you.
So thank you again. Welcome. Look forward to working with you and seeing you back here in the future. So
Thank you.
best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
right, next we have our spotlight event for the night, and for that, I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Regan.
Thank you, Chairman. So last spring, you heard us share information that we had received a grant from Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and we received funds to be able to run box programming in all 5 of our elementary schools. And so tonight, Hyman Fine Elementary School is here to share with us the fruits of those funds. And so we have Miss Martin, Miss Levesque, and Miss Blaze to share the presentation with us. If you could come on up.
Hello, thank you for having us, and I would like to echo what Mr. Rooney said in welcoming both of our new members and re-welcoming. It's wonderful to have you. We're very excited to be able to spotlight what is happening in the box program. So Mrs. Levesque is one of our coaches, Mrs. Blaze is one of our coaches. We have a couple students here to tell you about their experiences, and they put together a wonderful program.
Hi. So what is BOX? So BOX actually stands for Build Our Kids' Success. And it's a free program that's open to all students at Hyman Fine, grades 1 through 4. It's physically active, it's mentally active, and it creates a social atmosphere to work with kids with their minds and bodies. And a typical box session is about 40 to 50 minutes long. They come in, and the goal is really to keep them moving through the whole time. So even when they're listening to instructions or even just listening to nutrition, we want them to constantly be moving. We choose Box Kids of the Week, and we'll talk about that later. And we have teams that work on team building skills, and it includes boys and girls from all different levels. So we'll have one team that will have 1st grade all through 4th grade with boys and girls, a mixture of them.
Some interesting facts that you should know about fitness and keeping students moving is that it's increased physical activity has proven to reduce insulin resistance and protect children from obesity. So that's a very important fact about that. Exercise during the school day is a great way to add fitness to your child's daily routine, and it helps with academics and behavioral improvements. Daily fitness activity is essential for students developing a developing child, so it's very important to have that fitness piece in there. And also, students that exercise tend to be more alert.
So we started Box in the fall, and in the fall session we had 60 students enroll, which is, from what I understand from Box leaders and trainers from Reebok, is pretty high. She was kind of impressed when she came and saw all the kids there. Another fact is that only 3, out of the 50 students, there were only 3 that had absences. So they pretty much have attended every single session on Wednesdays and Fridays. For the spring session, currently, we have 50 students enrolled, and registration ends on Friday, so they still have another 4 days. So we're opening it up to about 80 students this time, as opposed to 60. There are currently 8 parent volunteers, which is awesome, and 6 staff volunteers. And regarding attendance, we do have a better attendance with the 3rd and 4th grade, as opposed to the 1st and 2nd grade, but pretty much all of the students have attended both sessions.
So this is just some of the action that the students are doing. We do running to kind of help build stamina and exercise. And in fact, one of the parents told us that there was a 5K around Thanksgiving, and she saw a lot of kids from the Box program there, which is very encouraging. So that's a really good thing to see, that they're kind of reaching out and spreading out. The picture on the left is basically a soccer game that they play with their feet. It's called a crab walk, and it's just an ending game for the end of the Box session. And the student on the top right is just a relay where they work on jumping and squeezing that ball as they move into a relay session.
These are the box kids of the week. So what we do is we're looking for kids that are following all the rules, because we can't really have kids that are in the gym, 60 of them not following rules. So, and for the most part they do, following the rules, listening to instruction, being good team players, and also kind of like standing out. Really working hard. And so every week we choose one from each grade, and they get a certificate, and we take their picture, and it's kind of like a big deal. And that's it.
So we asked the teachers to give us some feedback on what they thought was some positive things about Box. And as you can see, there's a lot of positive things up there. I mean, some of the teachers said that they've noticed positive differences in focus and attention. On Box mornings, the participating students do not need redirection when coming into class and get to work quicker and much more efficiently right from the first bell. Some of the other things they noticed was that students come in first thing in the morning ready to learn. They advocate for themselves. There's increased academics. One of the teachers actually said that her students' academics have increased because of them getting the exercise and their energy out in the morning. Do you want to add to that?
From some of the interesting facts that I've looked into, this is based on a book that was called Spark from a long, long time ago, and speaking as a school psychologist, I work with a lot of kids who have ADHD, and one of the best things that they can do is exercise, especially in the morning prior to any academic activity. So I agree with all of these things, and I think that the kids love it. I don't get any feedback that they don't absolutely love it.
So this is a video of one of the relay races that we did. Where the students are moving, they're doing push-ups, jumping jacks, and burpees.
Yep.
Because who wants to do a burpee first thing in the morning, right?
They
You're
do.
all on that. They love it. And even though they're really kind of racing against themselves, they're very competitive.
Yep.
So here's another video of practicing the skill of the week. As you can see, we have the parents that are very active as well, participating with the students.
That's me. I don't see any burpees.
And then this is another activity, working on balance. Whoops. And so this is an activity where they shuffle, and then when you say freeze, they're going to balance themselves on one hand and one foot. And they can do it any way that they feel.
Except for that laying.
All right, so before we get to these student interviews, we have two students that actually are here tonight that would like to share their experience with Box. We have Lillian, who's a 4th grader, and Blaine, who is a 3rd grader. Come on, you guys. Have a seat. Who wants to go first? All right.
How Box helps me in school. Box helps me concentrate in school because I get a lot of my energy out before Box on Box mornings. Another example is in gym class we do stretch leaders. When I'm one of them, I'll have more options of exercises and stretches to do. How Box makes us better friends. Box helps us make friends that we didn't have before this program, and it helps us see what that person can really do. We help each other and cheer each other on during the activities. What we learn in Box. In Box, we learn skills like burpees, push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, broad jumps, tuck jumps, and squats. There are a lot of games and relays that we have learned too. what we do at Box. At Box, we start off with a warm-up, next we do our skill of the week, then we do our relays and sprints, then a fun game or activity, then we finish off with our box cheer.
Lilia?
I like 7:30 a.m. because that is when Box starts. I joined Box because I enjoy exercising and learning about new ways to take care of my body. I also learn about how to take care of my mind. Mrs. Williams teaches us at the end of every Box lesson how to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. She also talks about nutrition and how much sugar and carbohydrates you should have to be healthy. Box helps me in school in many different ways. It has helped me to get the little bits of energy I have in me out so that I can be calm during the day. What I like most about Box is that in the beginning, when you come in, you get to walk around the gym and talk with your friends. My favorite activity at Box is relay races, where we hand off batons and you run across the gym. My brother and I like to use the skills we learn at Box at home to create obstacle courses and ninja races with our neighbors. We even make each other do burpees and mountain climbers in the races at home. Exercising with my friends is a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. And here are a couple more interviews from students.
And I'm Hannah. I'm in 4th grade. And I'm in 3rd grade. I signed up for a Box because in the morning I'm calm and it calms me down. I signed up for Box because I heard it helps you during the day. So if you have a test, then it calms you down for the test because it gets all your energy out. I like Box because it helps you in the morning, doing your work. What's your favorite thing? My favorite thing about Box is how we have a skill of the week. So, this week it's walking lunges, and we've had broad jumps and tuck jumps and squat jumps. My favorite thing about Box is the games that we play and the fun things that we get to do with partners.
And these are 2 younger students.
My name is Olivia. My name is Haley. I'm in 2nd grade. And I'm in 2nd grade. I signed up for Box because it could help me during the day while I am working hard. I signed up for Box because I get all my energy out, and if I have something to do and it's very loud, I want to be nice and calm. My favorite thing about Box is I get so much energy out that I can just focus on the day. My favorite thing about Box is that I get all my energy and then I have all my energy in the morning and then I let it all out.
And we have 2 more.
My name is Jackson and I'm in 4th grade. My name is Jacob and I'm in 4th grade. I like Box because it keeps me energized every day and I get all my energy out. I like Box because I like seeing my friends and playing the blob game. And I like the warm up.
And last one.
Hi, my name's Abby and I'm from 4th grade. My name's Lily and I'm from 4th grade. The reason why I like Box is because I like to get my energy out, because when I'm in my class, I feel like I have to touch everything in my desk, but when I'm not, when I do Box, I'm just calm, and that most of the time I'm more calmer. The reason I signed up for Box is it kind of stretches you out in the morning when you been sitting in your bed all day. It helps you stretch. And the reason why I signed up for Box is because I have lots of energy in the morning because I've been sitting in my bed and doing stuff and trying to get it out. But
and I do box, it makes me more calmer. The reason I signed up for box is it helps you. It's like get you ready for the whole day.
And then that's just a picture of the kids. And then some of our parent volunteers. And staff help as well. So.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Mr. Domenici?
Well, I mean, I think it's great. And when the box folks were here, like, I think it was last April, talking about how we got the grants to extend it to all 5 elementaries, I was thrilled. My kids have gone or are going to Thatcher, so box has been well established there. And I mean, even some of the volunteers, one of my friends, he no longer even has kids there, but he still does box because, you know, he sees the value in it. And I just like to see the way that it connects. Like, all the kids are talking about how it helps them with their energy and it helps them focus, and that's, you know, those are all good things. But you even heard little pieces about, like, all my friends are doing it. I get to make new friends. You've got the community coming in, so you've got parents volunteering and teachers taking extra time to be there in the morning for the kids. So I just don't have enough good things to say about it. I'm glad it's so successful at Hyman Fine and so well attended.
Thank you.
Ms. Sawyer?
Well, when my daughter was in elementary school, she loved it and she raved about it, and you know, she misses it. So I find it's a really great thing for the kids. Thank you.
Mr. Geddes?
I have a question for Lillian, and was it Blaine?
Yeah.
So Lillian, you said you like to do these games at home with your friends. I was wondering, do you guys do any sports? And if so, how has Box helped you with your sports?
It really helps me with my sports because I'm already stretched out. So when we start, I'm prepared and I don't get hurt or anything.
Nice.
I do gymnastics, so the conditioning helps me in gymnastics, so it's just one more way of getting stronger.
It's great to hear a 4th grader talk about nutrition and conditioning. So, great job, Box. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We found that it's a well-rounded program, that it includes an awful lot for our students, and we're thrilled to be able to bring it to the students at Hyman Fine, and we're hoping for extension of the program and being able to have it continue for a long
Great.
time to come.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you
guys.
very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, next we have our Around Attleboro, our Around Attleboro update from our Student Advisory Council. For that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Graber.
Thank you. Well, the beginning is what I talked about last time. We had our Pride Pouch collection at the high school and from the community before last year ended, and it was an amazing success. Students brought in hundreds of goods to help give gifts to those in need. And forgot to press the button. Also, recently we had the mayoral inauguration, and students from all around that community, the school system, and all levels contributed to that. We had people singing the not the Pledge of Allegiance. We had people saying the Pledge of Allegiance from our younger schools. Elementary schools, it's not really under elementary schools, but all schools have a half day on Friday and no school on the following Monday for Martin Luther King Day. In the middle schools, Mr. Rooney will be visiting and presenting to the 7th and 8th graders at Brendan, Koala, and Wamsetta about Blue Pride Night, and specifically to the 8th graders, he'll be talking about the Welcome Night. AHS guidance staff will be visiting the 8th graders to talk about Naviance and MyCap, which are processes we use in the high school for SAT scores, and I think grades and such will be integrated into that soon. At the high school, we have parent information night and conferences this Wednesday on the 15th. Where's this? And the welcome night for the class of 2024, so this year's 8th graders, is mandatory for all 8th graders and at least one family member on Thursday, January 30th. Also on the 30th from 6:30 to 8 is Blue Pride Night for our 7th and 8th graders. Mr. Rooney will be going to the middle schools soon to talk about those and present that information before the time comes. And like I said before, the Pride Pouch Drive was a huge success, and we'll be doing it again next year. And yeah, that's all. Any questions?
Any questions?
So much question, but just a comment. First off, I for inauguration night, it was the first time I got to be a part of that, and it was fantastic to see all the elementary, middle, and high schools represented. And then the Pride pouches, I know that Ms. Sawyer and I volunteered on Christmas Day at the dinner, and it was just amazing to see how many bags there were, and there was so many people that actually came. It was it's really cool that the high school is a good place to have that, and I just wanted to thank the students for putting all that together. I know it put a lot of smiles on people's faces that day.
We had fun putting them together too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, next on our agenda is the superintendent's report. I'll turn it over to Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I believe that the Attleboro Public Schools has a lot to be proud of and deserves a lot of notoriety, although it always seems that we make the national consciousness for the strangest things. Last week, it was a Christmas gift to a custodian that somehow took on a life of its own and became a story of significant widespread interest. I just wanted to say a few things about it. I'd like to say that this is in the rearview mirror, but quite honestly, it hasn't subsided. For anyone who's not fully informed of the story or is looking for a nice summary of it, today's article in the Sun Chronicle, I thought, did a nice job of capturing the story up to now. But last week, when it really started to roil, it was a very strange place to be, to wake up and find that Turtle Boy and Barstool Sports were the two sources that were coming to the rescue for the district and helping us manage our crises on social media. To sum it up very quickly, a group of students, about 20, did a very thoughtful thing and decided to join together and buy Tony Koala a gift, just out of appreciation for what he does, not out of any need or anything like that, just wanted to do a nice thing. And, one of their mothers wanted to share what was a heartwarming story with others. I honestly think nothing more to it than that. And then the story took on a life of its own and brought a lot of attention. And through all that attention, Mr. Koala decided that he, was uncomfortable with that amount of attention and wanted to pay forward the kindness and donate the boots. And that's where the story really took on a life of its own. And at this point, I think we've cleared up with most people that the school department didn't in any way get involved in this other than to support our employee who was struggling with how this was playing out for him on social media, and supported his decisions, in this case, to give the boots in question to someone of greater need, and trying to convey to other people that that was his choice and that we should all respect his desire. Unfortunately, we live in an era in which, and I think on social media in particular, not everybody pays attention to the whole story or to the beginning or the end of the story. They jump in a minute, and then miss that things change. So there are a lot of people out there who still think that there's a need here. And so this is why the story continues to go on. We're now receiving daily donations from people, gift cards. People are sending us boots, winter jackets. I don't know where that came from. And they are gifts to Mr. Koala, so he receives them. And so far he's been deciding to donate all those things, which is a nice part of the story, that these things continue to go to people in need. And he really deserves a lot of credit for how he's handled all of this. But from my perspective, I think there are two important takeaways. One, I think this whole episode happened because many of us who, read Facebook and other places like that, there's a certain paradigm that I think we've all become comfortable with, that someone identifies someone who's in need, and a group of people come to aid that person, and everyone gets to feel good about having helped someone who needed something. And I think that a lot of people mistakenly try to plug this story into that paradigm without noticing that the details of the story, as articulated by everyone at every stage, didn't actually match that fact pattern, right? Mr. Koala was not someone who was actually in need. This wasn't someone calling for bringing help to someone. This was just a kind act from some kids to a custodian that they had respect for. So the problem, I think, here really was that people saw a pattern that they're familiar with and tried to apply that pattern to this story, even though that the details didn't. And that's what led to all the confusion. And then I think the broader implication here is that as an institution of education, I think that this whole episode is symptomatic of a wider problem, right? I would like for a high school education to come with it some, basic academic skills that would help protect all of us from the kinds of mistakes that sort of played out in this particular scenario. And I feel like, as you've heard me talk about, and I mentioned in the inauguration speech, right, public education is critical to a free society. Having an electorate that has those skills and can think critically and can be critical consumers of information is what makes us all safer, makes this society a better and stronger one. And that we now live in a world where so many people only read the headline or are more concerned about how they feel about the content that they believe that they're encountering, rather than think critically about the actual details and the facts, leads to a lot of the drama that I think we all witness, and that in this particular case the school system was drawn into. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how do we best educate kids for the future, a future that they're going to inhabit, one that is very different from the one that we were educated for, and continues to change sort of in real time as we go. I think moments like this, while certainly was troubling in the moment, several of us lost quite a bit of time trying to manage this and keep it from becoming something bigger and worse than it already was. And as I said, it continues to be a drain on time, right? And worrying about all these donations, processing them and making sure that they're handled appropriately and that they go to the right places, right? This continues to be a job, and while it's a good job to have, it's not ultimately what the primary focus of the organization is. And so the time we spent last week, managing all this crisis, Mr. Rooney in particular, that takes away. So you say, oh, well, that's unfortunate. But, we really try to also learn from these things and to think about what they say about, our work in general. And in this particular case, I think it gave us a lot to think about in terms of the work that we need to do so that our kids will be as best prepared for a world in which digital media is going to be a significant part of it as best we can. So sort of my 2 cents about all of that. Some other quick updates. On Wednesday at 5:30 in the mini auditorium, as part of the parent conferences at Attleboro High School, I will be joining the administration to do a presentation to families about the changes to rank, Val-Sal, and grading at Attleboro High School. Just wanted to make families aware that that's a really good opportunity to hear us talk about the thinking that went to these changes, and also to be able to ask questions and for people to express their concerns to the people who are involved in that work. I know that several of us have certainly received some commentary on that, and this would be a good place to steer people who have some questions about that decision. As Eleanor mentioned, we have early release on Friday. I just wanted to remind the committee that the early release days are part of our ability to offer enough professional development for the year. I mean, quite honestly, we don't have enough time, and so these half days are critical to get us to the amount of time that we have. That's important professional development for our educators. Our targeted PD begins on Friday. We'll be focusing on rubrics for perform assessments, K-8, and also grading at the high school. You know, the Friday half-day isn't optimal, but I wanted to remind us all that we landed here because when we used to have half-days on Wednesdays, there were lots of concerns in the community of how disruptive that was to the week for families. And so there were some people who wanted to end the practice of having any half-days, which, as I've just explained, would be a pretty negative impact on our ability to provide the professional development that we need for teachers. So we reached the agreement to move them to Fridays and put those Fridays ahead of long weekends and holidays, so that, you know, for some families that's a chance to get a jump on travel and other plans for that time off. And so I just thought that, you know, we haven't talked about that in some time, and it might be worthwhile to remind people that that is how we arrived here. And while, you know, the half days are still a burden on some people, it's a trade-off I think that we as a community have to make so that we can ensure the best learning experiences for our students. Then finally, as many of you may have noticed as you came in tonight, today's a big, important day for the district as the steel has arrived and the project is entering a new phase as they erect the steel for the building. So if you, for the people at home, if you didn't have the occasion to drive by, anytime now it'll be going up. If you take a look at how much went up today, because again, everything that's out there right now happened today. When we arrived this morning, there was nothing. So that's a pretty amazing amount of work for one day's work. Good to the team that got that done, and you'll see that much change day in and day out for the next several months. So it's a pretty exciting portion of the project, and it's great to see that happening now because it's an indication that, as we keep saying, the project is on time. And we'll also mention that it remains on budget. So things are going well, and that steel is a good indication of that. And that concludes my report.
Any questions, Mr. Larson?
I just have one comment, and I don't mean to keep bringing the subject up, but I mean, anytime I was approached about the boots issue, I tried to spin it back to what an incredible gesture by 20 kids.
Absolutely.
And forget the rest of it. But 20 kids got together, 20 high school kids got together to do something for one other individual. And I tell everybody else, you know, after that, stop. Because that's the focus.
Yep.
You know what? 20 kids got together to do something great. End of story.
Here.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Sawyer. Next, we have minutes. Minutes from our December 9th, 2019 and January 7th, 2020 meetings were circulated with your materials. And so just first, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Just a reminder, you can vote on approving the minutes for meetings you were not at. So for anyone who wasn't at the last meeting, and for Bob and for Len, just FYI. Any other discussions, comments, edits? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Next, we have several consent agenda items tonight. Motion to accept the donation in the amount of $170.67 from Bliss Brothers Dairy to the class of 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept the donation in the amount of $1,000 from the Ray and Vera Conniff Foundation for music books, art books, and music recording for the high school library.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $13,300 from Citizens Bank to be split evenly between AHS Best Buddies and AHS Robotics.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $1,300 for the Pride Pantry from Friends of Janet Poor.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pursuant to Chestnut Hill Studio Limited contracts dated July 27th, 2017, motion to approve the contractual obligation of $1,201 to the general fund at the high school and $591 to directly benefit the class of 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $25 from Gail and Theodore Sargent to the Best Buddies program at the high school in memory of Nick Carlino.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $50 from Edward and Sharon Murphy to the Best Buddies program at the high school in memory of Nick Carlino.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $230 from the proceeds of the AHS Craft Fair to the field hockey team.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation of $100 from Daniel and Paula McKeever to the Robotics Club at the Attleboro High School.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation of $1,000 from the United Way to the Attleboro boys basketball teams contributed by Mim L. Rooney.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept the rebate check from the donation box for the June to November of 2019 in the amount of $37.50 from Bay State Textiles, Inc. inventory purchase to Hill Roberts gift donation line.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $500 from Joan Apcar to the Hill Roberts Library.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation of a slightly used Kindle Fire with an estimated value of $40 to classroom 103 at the Thatcher Elementary School from Terry Allen.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the Attleboro School District overnight international field trip proposal for 15 to 18 grades 9 through 12 students to participate in the national championship in Orlando, Florida on March 19th, 2020 to March 23rd, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And finally, motion to approve the Attleboro School District overnight international field trip proposal for grades 9 through 11 AHS students to participate in the Global Leadership Summit in Berlin, Germany on July 5th, 2021 through July 12th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that concludes our consent agenda. Next, in our amended agenda tonight, we have subcommittee reports, and on subcommittee reports, we have facilities and infrastructure. Mr. Geddes?
The subcommittee met on November 20th. We were joined by city councilors Rick Conti and Ty Waterman because we were discussing the status of the gym floors at Hill Roberts and Hyman Fine. When you get home, you can rewind and watch some of the videos from tonight's box presentation and look at the condition of the floor if you didn't notice it. A lot of discoloration, and it is both floors are in bad need of replacement. The goal of discussing it with the city councilors was to get us on the same page with the city about why we didn't have quotes in time for the initial city council plan for a vote on the funding. At the time, we were still going through some tests on the gym floors to determine exactly what needed to happen. So we discussed a number of different options in terms of once we knew exactly what types of work needed to be done, what the extent of the replacement was going to be. We talked about options for the surface, warranty options, maintenance costs, et cetera, et cetera. So since those tests have come back, Jason Parento will be looking into all of the options and giving us an update at the next meeting. With Mr. Conti and Mr. Waterman there, we began talking about other capital improvements that were on our list. Mr. Furtado gave us all an update on the capital improvements that we didn't anticipate earlier this year that had been requested from the city. We talked about the pending capital improvement list for 2021. And we got some feedback from Mr. Conti about how we should be prioritizing some of those requests and what we may need to add to the list down the road. Among those that we discussed was reconfiguring entrances to some of the elementary schools for increased security, as well as the driveway entrance up to Thatcher Elementary. Not this Monday, I'm sorry. On Monday, February 3rd, the capital improvement plan meetings from each department will be happening at City Hall. So Mr. Furtado will be there to discuss with the capital improvement committee for the city council. And I will also be there as well. Are you going? And Mr. Larson will be there on behalf of the finance subcommittee. Among the capital improvements that we requested, that we actually did not discuss when Mr. Conti and Mr. Waterman were there, was a new maintenance and facilities building at Highland Park. We have been using one of the sheds there for storage of some of our equipment in preparation for winter weather. When our staff went in, they noticed a lot of our equipment had been damaged by some mice in the building. So we were requesting a new building for that. As our discussion progressed, we thought we're not the only department in the city that needs this equipment or has this storage need. So it may make sense for this to be a shared building. So in the final capital improvement request, it was not listed as a school maintenance building, just as a maintenance building at Highland Park. I emailed Mr. Conti following the meeting about this, and haven't heard back yet, but I'm sure it will be part of the discussion in February. The last major discussion point was the grade span configuration that is being considered and what its impact may be on transportation and on the buildings, or what work would need to happen in all of the buildings. Just like everything else related to the grade span configuration, there's still a lot in the air that the administration is working through. So as they nail down some of those details, I'm sure we'll get those down the road. I do want to take a moment to thank Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Larson, Mr. Storrs for a good 2 years on the facility subcommittee. It was a very eventful 2 years. It saw the passing of the new high school and a number of other important projects. And I'm sure we'll have an eventful few years ahead of us. The subcommittee's next meeting is scheduled for February 26th at 7 p.m. The location is to be determined. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Geddes. Any questions, Mr. Hill?
I just wanted to ask about the security at the elementary. You said there was additional. Was it only for the elementary, not for the middle? Or can you just elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, so most of the middle schools have a more secure entrance in terms of a check-in point right inside the initial door, where you have to be let into the second door. With the elementary schools, such specifically Hyman Fine, Hill Roberts, Thatcher, Studley, the main office isn't exactly at that initial entrance. And so there's been talk of, while we do still, all the doors are still locked, anyone that is let in does have to check in as a visitor at the main office. Restructuring or adding some structure to those entrances would provide for a little extra security. It's been something that has been on the plan for a few years now, that just hasn't been approved by the city.
That's not my feeling about how at least Wamsutta and Brennan are set up. That there's really two doors.
Right.
And then you go through those doors, and then there's a long walk to the office. Am I correct about that?
Brennan and Wamsutta, I believe the office is right next to the entrance.
It is.
But you don't.
You have to walk up a little, but it's not a long
And it
walk.
also depends on what door you go in.
Well, we're talking the
main
main
entrance,
entrance.
yeah.
Yeah.
The main entrance, you go through one door, and then you at least take 10, 15 steps. Hyman Fine, if you go through the second door, it's 2 steps, and you're at the office.
If you go into the office.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the big issues, Mr. Hill, is there are no doors to prevent access to the building once you're through the front door.
At
Hyman Fine Hill Office. You cannot stop anybody from, once the door is open.
Correct.
Whereas in the other buildings, there are doors on corridors and rooms to stop entry. But because of the open floor plan at Hyman Fine Hill Roberts,
I see. Okay.
we were looking for a way to encapsulate the office to the entry, so
Okay.
you couldn't.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. that takes care of an immediate concern. It still, to me, would be ultimately for security in terms of the middle schools. That would be something that, I still would don't feel like that's a secure situation as well. Because you can go through 2 doors and then walk another 10, 20 feet without even checking into the thing. So, something for future thought.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Torres?
So I know that we talked about it at the facilities meeting, and I also had mentioned it to Mr. Withers as well. With the whole grade span change concept and how it's going to affect transportation, I know that we talked about if we can get an understanding of what the bus routes are currently, how many students currently are within the greater than 1 mile per policy, between the half mile and 1 mile per policy, because that affects the free busing as well as the pay for busing. And then, of course, kindergarten, first grade, all students are eligible. So I think because we know that's going to be impacted by this idea of going from 5 schools to 3 schools and 2 schools, we need to have an understanding of the numbers that's going to affect. And that's how I think we'd have to arrive at that. So if there's a way to get that information before we get to the point where it's finally coming to us.
Yeah, and throughout the PTO meetings, Mr. Sawyer and Ms. Regan have mentioned that the entire administration is looking at all of the different impacts and factors to this spring be able to present some more details of right now it's still very vague conceptually, but I think their goal, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, this spring is to be able to articulate what all of those impacts are, how the bus schedule would be different for students that are currently at Willett, or families that currently live in the Willett district that would now be starting at Studley and then going to Willett, and all of those changes. So still a lot to be worked out.
Sure. But if I could just put the pre-request in that when the information has come, current versus new, I think that's an important understanding.
Yeah.
Of what we have currently as compared to what the new would be.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
it's a small portion of that,
Sure.
of that
Thank you.
huge
Oh,
discussion.
right. Yes, yes.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Mr. Geddes. Next, open forum. Is there anyone who would like to address the school committee at open forum? Come forward and state your name and address, please. Mr. Amaral?
Thank you.
Yep.
Chairman Withers, ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I'm Joe Amaral. I'm a teacher at Attleboro High School, but I'm here as president of the Attleboro Education Association. And on behalf of the Teachers Union, I want to congratulate and welcome the 2 newest members of the committee and let you know that we really look forward to working with you going ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to address the committee? All right, that'll close open forum. Any new business? All I have is that I sent out subcommittee assignments yesterday and sent out a slight edit later today. But if anyone has any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. I can, hopefully answer any questions that you may have. As many of you probably recall, at the first meeting, I'll come to each of the first subcommittee meetings, get a subcommittee chair elected, and then you guys will set or approve your calendar going forward. Anyone else have any new business? All right, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Spotlight event and an introduction. Done in an hour.
get to be on a committee. Yeah. What's that?
It was
She survived your first one. Oh, yeah.
awful. It was awful. Never again will I. Never again. But thank you. Yes, it was an experience. That's for sure.
That's all right.
Thanks, Judy, for the info. Appreciate it.
I think I was looking at